Sonic Boom Episode 12. Let's play Musical Friends. Orbot gets shocked by a Motobug while trying to work on it, and he's visibly upset by it for a while. And Cubot wastes their time for a while before Eggman reveals he's been having a meeting with a villain who looks way more intimidating than him. Like, he looks like a devil. He insults his minions and laughs at them, and Orbot and Cubot actually plan on running away because of it. Somehow they were programmed to be able to do that. And it was sweet of Orbot to decide to say goodbye to every robot he's going to talk to. Also, Cubot's stupid enough to tell Eggman they're leaving, but somehow he doesn't care and continues his conversation despite hearing them. And Orbot and Cubot come over to Sonic, and they decide to try to prove their loyalty and get to stay with them by embarrassing Eggman. Cubot expects us to believe Eggman sleeps with a nightlight. That's all I remember. Then every single one of Sonic's friends thinks of a lame excuse not to hang out with them. I didn't get the joke until Knuckles literally said he's got to think of an excuse to abandon them. But instead they're all gonna abandon them! What assholes! This isn't characteristic of them, they're supposed to be heroes. Even Tails abandons them. Cubot and Orbot fight over a laptop game, and it says violence detected. And then we see the devil villain laugh, implying he's infecting Eggman's robots with a computer virus while he was having a nap. And so because of this overly convenient nonsense, Cubot sees from Tails' house what he was doing. Somehow, Eggman has no problem admitting he's evil, he doesn't immediately believe Cubot's warnings, and the devil guy immediately reveals his plan. He plans on eliminating all life forms. And Orbot reminds us how confusing it is that he wants a robot to see a real doctor because he thinks a robot got pink eye. He flees as I think about how intimidating it is that some skull and crossbones appeared on Eggman's screen, and his base was taken over by a computer virus. And after Six doesn't trust Cubot's warnings, some buzz bombers get sent after the heroes, with Sonic spin attacking all of them generically. And Tails decides to do a cyber attack of his own to beat the bad guy. He says he can't get inside Eggman's computer because of the firewall, so he thinks to protect his computer from the heroes, but not his base. And he decides he needs to use an artificial brain, so he connects Cubot to his table and electrocutes him and Orbot. Huh? Oh, it transports them into cyberspace. So we see them in 16-bit. And Cubot runs away from a chomper. The heroes keep generically attacking robots, and Knuckles makes a bee pun. I had to resist the urge to laugh when Amy snarked that wasn't funny the first few times you said it. I never expected a show based entirely on forced comedy as a basis to lampshade the use of puns. Let alone lampshade that its joke wasn't funny. We see Cubot and Orbot crash a biplane to a tree, and Cubot sees a button in an arcade, and some balls close in on them as they're trapped in a room. Then a robot challenges the heroes and tries to shoot lasers at them. This plot is really disjointed. I really wish we could get fully invested in the heroes' fight instead of constantly cutting away to Orbot and Cubot. Why couldn't they have just instantly seen the bad guy instead of waiting until now to recite the Konami code? The devil lampshades that rock, paper, scissors doesn't make sense. I didn't realize it was rock, paper, scissors until they made those hand gestures. He dies and the robots fall because he thinks their complicated game's rules are too stupid, even though it just looks like rock, paper, scissors. So they beat him because of their love of fun games despite being Eggman's robots. That is creative. I'm glad they found a way to make them useful. The bad guy was acting like they were being stupid, but if their game is too complicated, that's kinda not stupid because Orbot had to do a lot of thinking to make it like that. Or rather, overthinking. Why the hell are Orbot and Cubot coming with Eggman and agreeing to give him a sponge bath? They clearly shudder and hug each other when they're told to do that. Then again, considering they were never treated like they belonged by the heroes, and they weren't given any other clear direction in life as to where they should go, and there's robots, it does make sense that they'd aimlessly go back to Eggman. They got basically no rewards out of leaving him, and at least working for a harmless villain gives them something to do every day. And he's harmless aside from collateral damage, which they never help with. They just clean his base and fix his robots. Can you believe Tails didn't even thank Orbot and Cubot for saving the day? Or that the devil guy had no attempt at a fruiting excuse despite his over-the-top evil plan? At least when Commander Brutus wanted to destroy all organic life, it made sense because he was an evil robot literally programmed with Eggman's brain. But this computer virus guy came out of complete nowhere. It would have made sense if we were told that Eggman made him to have a friend he could relate to. But instead it feels like he was just a fellow villain who always existed off screen. But he's a computer virus. So someone must have made him, and got killed, I guess, since we don't see him. This episode had Orbot and Cubot leave Eggman because he was neglecting them in favor of a computer virus bad guy out of nowhere. At least Scratch and Grounder made it a lot more obvious that they think of Eggman as their father and have a brotherly dynamic, if a sibling rivalry one, because they argued over who Robotnik loved best, and they even have their own bedrooms. Since when do Orbot and Cubot have their feelings hurt over their abusive boss not spending time abusing them? I was impressed by how intimidating the bad guy was though, because not only is he a devil in appearance and has a desire to destroy all organic life, but he's a computer virus. Who isn't afraid of those? And it was really competent of him to take over Eggman's robots. Sadly, this doesn't really matter because all it does is force the heroes to fight robots just like they always do. This looks like the kind of villain who could be part of a story arc. It could have been Eggman fighting them again, and it'd make no difference because Eggman himself didn't do anything to help the heroes. I guess they were defending Eggman when he was outside, so there's no way he could have gotten hurt by them, but then what was the point if we didn't get to see Eggman fighting Badniks for a change? Instead he just goes to Tails, and they team up to send Orbot and Cubot's CPU into the internet to bother the bad guy, who was such a one-dimensional cartoon villain that I didn't remember his name. Somehow Cubot and Orbot killed the bad guy by frustrating him with a pointless game of rock, paper, scissors he invented. But I'm not as mad about this as I could be because the heroes spent enough time fighting for it to not be too much of an anticlimax. All they did when fighting was fight generically as usual, so we weren't being cheated out of anything interesting. And it was really creative how Orbot and Cubot won, even if logically they would have lost horribly. Why would being confused and frustrated make the devil guy die and give up control over the robots? It made more sense if the heroes smashed all the robots themselves. And we could be told that he was trapped in them, so he was destroyed by them. This wasn't even mentioning the huge, depressing jerk moments of the so-called heroes in this episode. Orbot and Cubot wanted to save the heroes, and they even proved they're not too loyal to Eggman because Cubot tells them some embarrassing secrets he has. Heroes are supposed to be such surprisingly good moral people that you look up to them. Like how Knuckles saved Dimitri's life when he was falling from the sky. I'd rather a character be confusingly nice than confusingly asshole-ish, especially when they're a hero, and one of the main characters. Tails especially. Being heroes is one of the main parts of their characters, and that's for a reason. It's not like they're villain protagonists, like the main cast of Malcolm in the Middle. You're supposed to find them sympathetic and root for them. But instead of them being actually good people, they all ditch them. While they do agree to let them stay with them, it doesn't matter that much because they basically refuse to be friends with them. But they're not even honest enough to say that to their faces. Instead they make excuses to ditch them one after the other like two-faced jerks, without ever explaining why. Instead of even trying to get to know them. They could at least explain that they are creeped out by the way they look, or don't trust them because they keep going back to Eggman. Shouldn't they know that Orbot and Cubot are nice people who don't deserve this kind of mistreatment? Wouldn't it have been much more interesting to see how Orbot and Cubot would fit in and interact with the heroes? Wouldn't it be fun to see them do their comedy sidekick routine during a mission for them? They could work just as well regardless of who they're working for, because unlike all of Eggman's other main sidekicks in the series, they're not actively doing evil things all the day, so they're hardly irredeemable. They're hardly deserving of being ignored and ditched like that. They're not like Snively, Sleet, or Scratch. What have they ever done to them? I was especially shocked that Tails ditched them. I thought a naive engineer would be fascinated by having robots as his friends. Tails is supposed to be the nicest, most moral person out of all of them. Styx is at least paranoid by nature and a wild jungle dweller in the past. I could understand Sonic being like this because he's the one you expect to be fighting robots the most, and he wouldn't be used to being respectful of them. And plus he's genre savvy, so he'd know this can't last. I get why hanging out with them would be awkward after all that time, but still, at least give them a chance. Amy's supposed to be idealistic. She's been idealistic of Eggman a lot. She's the same character who talked Gamma and Shadow into becoming good guys when she barely even knew them. All because she cared enough to give them a chance when they looked like the definition of hopelessly evil villains. But it was in character for her in the sense that she's a bitch sometimes, but she wasn't in one of her bad moods in this episode. Aside from having a satisfying lampshading Snark and Knuckles being an idiot, she was just fine this episode. Somehow, the same person who easily agreed to play a chess game of fuzzy puppies with Eggman later, redecorate his base, and be his manager for a film he was working on later, refused to try to be friends with Orbot and Cubot, who are a million times less evil because she can't let go of a grudge. Sure, they're free-willed robots, so they have much less of an excuse to stay with Eggman. But if Amy's personality in the show has been established constantly to be the stereotypical girl character for the most part, then why is she not the one trying to talk to them, get to know them, and spend quality time with them? She tried to do that with Eggman. She could show them what it's like on the other side, and get them to do good deeds so they really know what they've been missing. At the very least, she could spend time with them while watering her flowers or gardening or doing arts and crafts. After all the stereotypical girly hobbies and talents she's been given this show, I'm really surprised I haven't seen her gardening or taking care of potted flowers yet. But that's the most obvious one. Amy and Tails are really obvious candidates for heroes who would be nice to Orbot and Cubot and try to bond with them. If Tails was perfectly fine with bringing their minds into the internet, and conveniently already had a machine built that could do that on the same day they came to stay with them, then couldn't he have at least tried to reprogram them against Eggman? Maybe he was waiting for them to go to sleep for the night so he wouldn't risk scaring them away by even implying he'd do that. But it just seems obvious that if one of the robot henchmen of your worst enemy goes to stay with you, the first thing in your mind as an engineer should be to reprogram them to be a good guy against Eggman permanently. And of course they wouldn't agree to letting him do that, but Tails could always knock them out, and he has no real reason to be opposed to doing that. Even Knuckles shocked me with his behavior. The nicest thing I can say about Boom Knuckles that's unique to his character is that he's nice. He's easily the most nice, cheerful, and harmless of the Knuckles, because most of them are snarky and serious. But this one is constantly smiling and trying to be amusing, the exact opposite of a character who's normally a negative person. Although in his debut game, Knuckles always laughed at Sonic, and that's how he acted 99% of the time. So it's actually kind of weird in hindsight compared to how serious he is in later games. When does he ever laugh at Sonic again? That was his first game, you'd think that'd be an establishing character moment. The point is, Boom Knuckles may be an idiot, but he's not the kind of stuck-up judgmental jerk who would make a lame excuse to ditch Orbot and Cubot instead of spending time with them. I expect him to be nice, not an asshole. Sure, it'd be awkward for them to have them with them when they're doing their normal things, because they're used to them being with Eggman. But that's not judgmental of them. Like, God forbid anyone else join their little clique. How immature. They really are teenagers. These characters are supposed to be better than that because they're heroes. They're heroes, aren't they? Even Fiona didn't get treated this badly. She would have quit immediately. These guys had the potential of this plot completely squandered immediately because we didn't get to see them on even one measly mission with them. And the heroes' only interaction with them was to ditch them. Talk about pointless and underwhelming and lazy. I would have assumed that the heroes would just keep doing the same activities they always do together, but with Orbot and Cubot there. I'm not imagining them talking to them, but that'd still be better than this, because at least they'd all be together. Like they could be participating in a race when Sonic and Knuckles have one of those race car races together. They could be driving around go-karts and having the time of their life. At least until Cubot would crash into a rock. They could be watching TV with the heroes and commenting on how normal adult life is so different from theirs. They could play video games with them. Tails even gave them what he thought was a video game after ditching them to do something else. That is the most relatable way for someone to try to keep an unwanted guest occupied without them. I do like that the heroes have video games like relatable people. But still, somehow a kid who's so uncomfortable with Eggman's harmless robots that he ditches them, trusts them to not cause trouble in his living room just so they can fight over his laptop and magically discover the bad guy's plan, complete with seeing its effect on Eggman's robots from another house. You'd think Tails would never trust these guys alone in his house, if the whole reason they're all avoiding them is lack of trust. If not because he thinks they're evil, then at least because they're incompetent and bicker with each other. Cubot, at least, is the definition of unreliable. Really, he'd be much more of a burden to the heroes, and they'd be better off having him sabotaging Eggman, even if in a very minor way he brushes off most of the time. So Tails ditching them to play video games together in his living room was not only rude, but stupid as well. Worst case scenario, Cubot could end up destroying some of his living room. They could burn his house down for all he knows. It's not like they're ridiculously incompetent like Scratch and Grounder, who constantly have slaps against each other as they actively fight each other and make dumb mistakes, but they did fight over his laptop, and realistically they would have gotten it damaged and broken. Tails, the genius, didn't even consider that. Bottom line is, while the premise got me excited, it was completely wasted because the so-called heroes have massive, dickish, out-of-character moment. when most of them are supposed to be nice. It's moments like these that truly define a nice person. And they failed that test hard. Orbot and Cubot may be Eggman's robots, but they're still polite and friendly people who did basically nothing to them. But the heroes are too biased and judgmental of them to care. They're not even really enemies. They have no bad memories of them. So they have no reason to hold a grudge against them. What kind of actually good people would be like this? The heroes being polite to the civilians doesn't matter nearly as much because that's how most normal people are anyways, because that's basic social skills to get by in society. And these guys are celebrities, so they have to be polite in public. But when they're good enough to be nice to Orbot and Cubot, who are the definition of minions with an F and evil, that really destroys the argument that they're as heroic and good as they should be. Because they take a real hero to be nice to these guys. By showing such obvious clique behavior, these really are no better than a group of irresponsible, immature teenagers who just happen to get the job of fighting Eggman because they can do it. And not people you want to look up to for their bravery and heroism. You'd think Tails would equip the police with ray guns so they could fight the robots too instead of being useless as usual. Then they'd have all the time for goofing off in the world. And aside from Sonic, who's addicted to the danger, you'd think they'd all prefer to retire at this point if they care more about playing games with each other than taking every opportunity to do good deeds. Even in this small way. They don't ever say that they assume Orbot and Cubot aren't permanently staying, and so they shouldn't get themselves attached by bonding with them, because that'd make them leaving actually hurt. And they don't have anything to fear from them. So instead, they all come off as judgmental jerks who refuse to have some nice people in their presence for no reason. Like they're the cheerleaders in a high school show. Realistically speaking, how did these judgmental jerks ever agree to let Styx spend all their time with them then? I like Styx, but she's a million times more worthy of judgment. She's lucky she has any friends at all. Most people like her wouldn't. Almost every one of her lines in the show is just a delusional conspiracy of hers and she has no reason to believe. At least real-life conspiracies can sound believable because they're taking advantage of the gaps in knowledge we have. Like from you not knowing a public figure personally. With the kinds of things Styx believes, she clearly needs help. Like thinking trees are spying on her. What's that doing in a kid's show? Instead, the writers just use her and say, here's a paranoid schizophrenic person saying something crazy. Now laugh! But instead of finding her funny, I just feel bad for her. What kind of kids' humor is this? There are real people like her, so that's not funny, it's uncomfortable. So you'd think her friends would all be uncomfortable too and want to treat her the same way as Orbot. But instead, they include her in their fun activities like it's no big deal. Even though her every interaction with them makes a fool out of her. And the exact same thing can be said for Knuckles. Why did they let Knuckles into their exclusive little clique? Just because he can fight robots? Anyone could if Tails gave them a ray gun. Orbot could. Sonic does say that Styx is nice, but I certainly don't see that here. I see someone who accused Cubot of lying about Eggman's robots being taken over, when he was overly honest with them last time they were there. When has she ever been especially nice compared to normal people? We never see her donate to charity. It's Amy who planned on doing that one time. And yet we see none of her charitableness here. When she witnessed firsthand Orbot and Cubot crying giving money to charity when she told them about her plan to donate to one. So if anyone should trust them, it's her. How'd that not give her respect for them? My point is, how did Styx ever become an accepted member of their group, participating in most of their activities, if this is how they treat Orbot and Cubot? The depressing answer is that they're Eggman's main robot sidekicks and she's not. So nothing could ever make them accept them. But they have actual believable dialogue and charming personalities that aren't just one-dimensional bad joke. Which already puts them way above Knuckles and Styx, who have no reason to be included in their activities if the excuse for ditching Orbot is, what could we talk about with them? They can't have fulfilling conversations with Knuckles and Styx, but that never stopped them. I've never seen the heroes actually enjoy Styx's presence and have close moments with her as a friend. Well, aside from the time when Sonic slow danced with Styx and helped her up. The closest I can normally find to close moments is the episode where Amy tried to get her to act like a lady. And that was all dedicated to trying to change her, even if temporarily. It hammers home how lucky she is that she gets to be a part of their group then. And how stupid and unacceptable it is that we don't learn how she became a part of their team. That's something that should have been handled in the first episode. She's one of the main characters. What were they thinking? So Styx can throw a boomerang at robots while these guys can't fight at all. But so what? They could hide. I would have understood and forgive them for not wanting them around if the episode showed them inconveniencing the heroes, with Cubot being a incompetent idiot and Orbot fighting with him and accidentally breaking stuff and distracting the heroes. Then I'd understand, but the heroes don't even give them a chance. The writers could have justified the show's dedication to the status quo in a way that didn't make the heroes look like assholes. Have Eggman send a wireless signal that forces Orbot and Cubot to come back home. Have the heroes do their regular activities with them at their side. What do they care? That'd be more interesting to watch, but instead the story rushed the whole concept and skipped over anything interesting that could have happened. I hope we see them hang out with the heroes for real sometime. It make a lot more sense than the heroes spending time with Eggman, which was a constant thing early on to the point where it became the norm. Sonic Boom Episode 12-2 Late Fees. For once, Tails is wearing his goggles, as he gives Sonic jumper cables and duct tape while using an invention. He tells Sonic that something's on the top shelf behind the video game, so Sonic can use a lot of electricity to initiate spinning death blades. Knuckles sits on a spinning fan, and realistically he'd throw up. But fortunately he didn't. He took way too long to get flung off from centrifugal force. Amy calls on Sonic and nags him for not returning her library book. It's justified they didn't do it already in 2 seconds because he doesn't remember where the book is. So he retraces his steps from yesterday and remembers blowing up a building after taking a picture with Amy, and having a fun time with the villagers doing the limbo before somehow it explodes too. Then he gets the library book back. And for no reason at all, he doesn't run to the library the second he gets the book. And if the writer thought to have Tails lampshade this, he shouldn't have written it that way. This is going to be a stupid episode. Sonic runs around and says he'll have it back in 10 seconds. But somehow an old man is in front of him and Sonic just stands there instead of walking around him, or running around him obviously, when he should have gone way past him before he'd even have the chance to block him. And he wouldn't just let him waste time talking to him. This episode sucks! Right away I can tell this is an episode by a writer who doesn't think about how having super speed would affect Sonic's life. Compare this to Archie, where we constantly saw him play sports with himself, or get a picture taken of himself after using the shutter, and we were told why his shoes don't burn up when he runs. How far we've fallen since then. He also wastes time talking to Styx. How is he managing to screw this up? What a pathetic idiot. Why is he going up to fastidious Beaver and waiting for a burger? This is as stupid as the issue of the Sonic X comic, where everyone could keep up with Sonic on a race across the planet. And it's not funny that the Beaver's taking forever to decide what to buy. So ridiculously long that I bet it puts the overly long gags of Family Guy to shame. Then he wastes time with Eggman, and then with the old man again, who somehow forgot that he told him he got a free soda before. Sonic may be in a blue blur, but he still looks slow sometimes. Especially when there's a close-up of him and the background is going past him. Then he stops in front of another old lady instead of effortlessly going around her without stopping, or jumping over her, like in the games, and not stopping. It'd be fine if Sonic explained that he doesn't actually care about returning Amy's library book in the slightest, and isn't actually trying. I could buy that from Scourge. Instead, the episode's written like crap. Why is he giving Eggman a hot dog? Why humor this monster? Why go back to get him extra relish? He doesn't even explain that he's rewarding him for making his life more fun by trying to fight him all the time. How did the writer not see that this was tedious? Then Sonic gets caught in a net and cage by Styx because she was going after potential aliens. And she tries a whole bunch of keys instead of Sonic just instantly spin dashing his way through the cage like I immediately assumed he'd do, from past experience with the series that the writer clearly doesn't have. This is mind-bogglingly stupid. Not even a fanfiction would write this kind of plot, because every fan has had it hammered into their skull by now that Sonic is fast. I'm surprised we got to see one of the guilt trippers again, and I thought the show didn't have continuity. Predictably, Sonic doesn't run away before he could get a chance to start guilting him that his children need nutrition and he's sick. Seriously, why did he listen to what he had to say? Especially after the last time he met him. Sonic is supposed to be impatient. So he wastes time helping him with whatever he wanted, I forgot, and Eggman shoots at him with the Eggmobile, not grateful that he got him a chili dog. If Sonic's really fast, why wouldn't he instantly leave Eggman's Eggmobile in the dust? Eggman doesn't look like he's flying at Sonic speed, and his body wouldn't be able to handle the G-force if it did, especially since he doesn't have a dome over it to protect him like he's supposed to. He threatened Sonic with his badniks after I'm expected to believe a genius was held back in middle school, and the heroes help him fight badniks. Sonic then asks where the book is, and Amy's mad at him for still not returning the goddamn book. And Knuckles wastes some more time on Sonic by reading the book because it has pictures in it. Then an ungrateful civilian refuses to open the door for Sonic in the library even though it isn't actually closed. And somehow, after Eggman blasts a hole in the library's wall with a laser, Sonic still manages to return the book on time. Well, that's good. This episode sucks. It would have been so easy to write it well, with any main character other than Sonic. Just have Sonic be super busy, so that he can't be relied on to deliver a library book, which logically would take 3 seconds and not be an entire plot. So either have Amy be the one returning the book, the plot would have worked just as well with her, or have Sonic lose his super speed for the episode because Eggman fired a ray at him. Instead, the writer wrote like he had no idea how fast Sonic was, which is a ridiculous notion and a complete contrast from Archie, which dedicated entire mini-stories to how his speed benefited him. A Sonic who's running at over 700 miles per hour would not have the chance to be constantly blocked by these people. And even if he was, he would have jumped over them. He had no excuse to stand there and waste time listening to any of them talk, even once. Especially not Eggman. This entire episode was stupid. It wasn't thought through at all. They picked the worst possible character for this kind of plot. It could have been anybody considering how mundane it was. And speaking of mundane, like so many different mundane things happen, couldn't we have just not had him need to return a library book? And he was just going through the village without trying to return a library book? The plot might have worked just as fine if he was trying to... No, because he would go anywhere, like, at the speed of sound. So, there's no justifying this. The premise doesn't work. Do people not have cars on this island? Why is everyone walking around? I've seen Tails go around in a hovercraft before, and that has to be how the heroes get to where they're needed so fast, because they're not the same speed as Sonic. But somehow always manage to get to a place at the same time as him. So they left hovercrafts off screen and rushed to fight the badniks. So logically, there's no way this plot would happen, because nobody would take the time to walk to the library by foot instead of taking a hovercraft there, even if this is a place where nobody has cars. I can believe that because maybe it's just that small of a village, and the world's population could all be using subs and taxis and trains instead. We'd have a world like that too if the car companies didn't buy up those trains and have them destroyed a while ago. These people might not be as reliant on gas-guzzling cars as us, which has to be why old people are just taking a walk outside at 3 miles an hour instead of driving. It just barely makes sense. It's a world with robots in it. Why wouldn't they have cars?